on, thanks for coming. That got your attention, didn't it? Thanks for coming to our NHS socially distanced protest. It's really good to see you here today, supporting the idea of an NHS free for everyone, open to visitors to this country, which was the original intention of the NHS. That was in its original plan, was that visitors to this country would be treated by the NHS. And that arrangement was reciprocated. So when I got ill when I was in India in 1972, I was treated for free because there was a reciprocal arrangement with the National Health Service. It cuts both ways, it cuts both ways then and it cuts both ways now. So that's a little bit about that. I'm called Nigel Smith. I'm a member of York TUC. I'm also a member of York branch of Socialist Alternative, which is not part of the Labour Party. We're a party outside of the Labour Party, to the left of the Labour Party. That's our stall over there. If anybody's interested in a booklet about the NHS, a specific booklet for 50p or £1 or badges, they're for sale over there. But we're here to make a more general point of solidarity with the NHS and also consciousness of the attacks that are taking place against the NHS. Also in one of my roles, I'm chair of the steering group who's trying to coordinate defence of the NHS in this city and across this trust, because it's very important to remember, and this is the main thing I'll be speaking on, it's very important to remember that the York Trust covers the east of Yorkshire as far as the sea, including Farley, Bridlington and of course Scarborough, Malton and Selby. It's a big trust in terms of its reach geographically, and it's important for us to remember that, because this trust has attacked the hospitals on the East Coast in particular and removed services from those hospitals systematically over the last 5 or 6 or 7 years. And it's really shocking. I do a lot of National Health Service stalls in York. Some of you may have seen me campaigning for the NHS, as does Gwen, who will be speaking later. But the difference when you go across to Scarborough is unbelievable. The way that the services are cut there, affecting people's lives in the most dramatic and distinctive way. And this is a responsibility of this trust, unfortunately. And they make excuses about why they've got to remove services from Scarborough. And the last one was the stroke services going from Scarborough. So people will have to come through to York in the event of a stroke. And for all sorts of routine treatment, people in Bridlington and Farley and Scarborough, who had perfectly decent hospitals, are having to travel to Hull, to Middlesbrough, to York, all over the place for very, very routine procedures. And this is a very disturbing aspect of the creeping, if you like, bureaucratic management of the National Health Service, closing smaller hospitals and leaving fewer and fewer very large hospitals, very large CCGs, trusts and all the rest of it, so that the service to the people is much less directed at them and much more directed at cutting costs. Although in fact the reality is it doesn't cut costs. It increases costs because it increases illness. But this is the bureaucratic approach you have. Massive layers of management, and also the introduction of the limited liability company at York for facility staff, which was forced through by the trust against public wishes and against a massive opposition from the staff, resulting in strike action. And this is another reason for this protest today, is to keep the NHS, to keep limited liability companies, wholly owned companies and the private sector out of the National Health Service, and to kick them out of the National Health Service. We've seen during the COVID crisis the inefficiency of the private sector writ large in the NHS. We have seen the way that accountancy firms such as PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte's have been put in charge with fundamental programmes around contact and tracing, and it's been a total fiasco and a real disaster. It's effectively quality living jobs for the boys. And this is a shocking indictment beyond this of the inefficiency of the private sector in our National Health Service. The nurses and the doctors are ignored. The porters and the cleaners are rubbished. The whole of the workforce in the hospitals around the NHS is not appreciated. The claps, if you like, are an ironic joke against those staff who've worked heroically throughout this crisis, as have other workers. And this is why we're here today, because we want to cut across that and say we value the NHS and the traditions of the NHS, how it was set up in the first place and what it was set up to do, and we want it to do that again, and we want to fight for that. And we're going to have to fight for that with a Boris Johnson government making deals with the United States. It's absolutely appalling what's coming, but other people will be speaking more about that. So the first speaker we have today is our MP, and I'm really, really happy for York Central to see Rachel Maskell here today. Somebody who worked in the National Health Service, somebody who fights for the National Health Service and fights for justice across the city and across the country. So I'll hand over to Rachel.
It's just fantastic to see you all. For 20 years I worked in the NHS and I wore my badge, which I brought along today, with pride. And I know there are so many people working in our NHS who have worked so hard for us over the last few months. This morning I penned something I want to share with you. It's personal to me, the NHS, for so many reasons, as I know it is for all of you. On the 5th of July 1948, the NHS was born. Today it is 72. On the 5th of July 1972, I was born. I'll let you work out what my birthday is today. So, this is what I wrote. Acts of compassion, words of kindness, professionalism, skill, love, care and dedication. Millions of miracles meet millions in need. This is our NHS. 72 years ago, against a wave of opposition, Labour's Nye Bevan launched our NHS. The greatest expression of socialism transformed a nation recovering from economic devastation. It belonged to the people, built by the people, and served by the people for the people. No questions asked, no judgments made, all with need were welcome, and all received every intervention possible. A universal benefit no matter what you have put in. A principle levelled those with everything with those with none. As Bevan said, the dustman and the duke were equals. It challenged structural inequality, and it started to win the battles against the consequences of this. Revolutions of science and research meant that tears of despair turned to hope, that mortality is challenged and people can fulfil their lives again. Treatments, science, pharmaceuticals, medicine and surgery have all advanced to relieve us from our afflictions. They have raised our belief that once what was impossible can now be realised. 72 years on, our NHS battles the assaults, violations and exploitation by those who want to profiteer, governments who have tried to crush the national jewel, and business who have sought their opportunity. Traitors of humanity all, as they deny people access, charge for services and amputate swathes of our NHS to be spun on the global markets to be controlled by darker forces. As the trauma of the last few months have shown, the resolve of the people is unshaken. It is our NHS. Woe to those who dare to take advantage and make their millions on the back of the sick. The NHS is no social experiment. It is a prototype that works. It delivers. It is available over, and it resolves to take on the justice of health and the social and economic inequality which deepen this through healing broken bodies, broken minds and broken spirits. The NHS is the cure of a sick nation. Imagine housing available to all who have need, social care ready to dignify everyone who requires additional help, a criminal justice system which puts the spotlight on the causes of make our economy productive again and the jobs provided to build a sustainable future for generations. These dreams are no greater than that of my Bevan. We carry them in our hearts and minds. The radical roots of our NHS is the inspiration that has seeded in many of us who aspire to transform our society at the juncture of economic and social crisis. There is no barrier too high and no need which is greater. Ready to serve, let the transformative power and determination of our time shape our nation again and serve the needs of our age. Happy birthday, NHS. You didn't just give birth to the greatest service ever formed. You provided the vision on which we must rebuild our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Rach. That was beautifully put. And it's not only happy birthday to the NHS, it's also happy birthday to Rachel. So can we just give Rachel a clap and wish her all the best on her birthday? What a birthday to have coinciding with the NHS. Okay, right, we'll move on now, and the next speaker we've got is Leigh Wilks. Leigh is the President and Chair of York Trades Council. York Trades Council has had a fighting approach to defending the NHS. It fought alongside the unions during the limited liability company introduction at the trust here, and it actually spreads beyond that, actually winning the fight in Bradford, where we lost the fight in York. But the fight isn't over, because that fight will continue, because these limited liability companies are poisonous for our National Health Service. So I'll hand over to Leigh Wilks from York TUC President.
Thanks very much for that, Nigel. Comrades, brothers and sisters. Firstly, I want to thank you all for coming along, because I think it's clear now that the NHS staff don't need just a clap, they need a pay rise as soon as possible. Looking at the scenes in town last night and across other cities in the country, I think it's fairly clear that we're going to see a second wave of this disease in the coming months. And having looked into the details of what this disease involves and what it does to the human body, I find that really fearful, to be perfectly honest. We've seen some devastating changes over the last few months, and this is going to get worse over the next couple of months. Changes to terms and contracts, redundancies, job losses, increased numbers of unemployment, people claiming benefits. The economic impact of this is going to be absolutely devastating, and I think mental health issues is going to be an issue that's going to come up increasingly in the next few months as well. So the economic and the social and the medical cost of this crisis on this country has been absolutely incalculable. But we know what the answer to this is, and the answer is quite simply socialism. And the National Health Service is the greatest achievement of British socialism of the last 72 years. So this begs the question, if socialism works so well in the National Health Service, why can't other national institutions work so well on a socialist basis as well? Everybody coming out today has proved that there is a fight left for the preservation of the NHS. And as Nigel said, the US pharmaceutical companies like Kaiser Permanente are already circling like vultures around the service, trying for the rich pickings. But there's one thing in this country that unifies people, and that is the National Health Service. And if we can unify around preserving the National Health Service, I think that could bring the whole country on board, and we can turn things into our direction. So a fully funded, publicly National Health Service, we should all be campaigning for, and I applaud you all for coming out today to start that movement. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Leigh. From a trade union perspective, it's about jobs as well, and about quality of work for workers in the National Health Service being treated with dignity and respect. We've seen how cleaners and care staff and all sorts of other staff in the National Health Service have been indispensable during this crisis. They're indispensable all the time. Their jobs really matter, and they are skilled workers. I remember once seeing a cleaner telling off a nurse for trying to clean the ward. This was before the limited liability company, because the nurse was getting it wrong. So that's not your job, that's my job. When you start wanting me to give people injections, then you know I won't be doing that. You don't be doing my cleaning. Right, there's a skill involved in this work, and all of those jobs should be respected. And this person deserves a tremendous amount of respect. Gwen Vardigans is absolutely tireless campaigner in a number of issues, but especially on the NHS. And she's trying to relaunch Defend Our NHS in York, and I wish her all the success in the world. Gwen Vardigans.
To recognise the value of the NHS for the health of our nation. I'm talking to you through a veil of hair, I'm afraid, till Wednesday. Right, we already know, don't we, that the NHS was formed in 1948. I was born before the NHS, so it cost a lot of money to bring me into the world. It might just be worth it. And I'd like to talk to you first of all about of status and the ability to pay. Despite several reorganisations and underfunding, the NHS served us well until the dreaded Health and Social Care Act of 2012. This threatened it in three ways. First of all, Section 75 of the Act, which opened the NHS to privatisation, allowing private companies to bid competitively to secure lucrative contracts to deliver services and equipment. Secondly, the year-on pattern of underfunding and baffling layers of bureaucratic management. Thirdly, the Private Finance Initiative, or PFI, which since 2012 has cost £250 billion building new NHS premises using private sector loans and high interest payments, now crippling many NHS trusts. During the coronavirus pandemic, we've all admired the response of the healthcare staff and the key workers, but years of undermining and underfunding of the NHS made coping with the numbers of cases difficult. PPE equipment was in short supply. The NHS supply chain procurement service had already been privatised. It had been changed into 11 private procurement centres, and they then outsourced the ordering of PPE and ventilators to other private providers, who some of them outsourced it further on, and some of them were not up to the enormous task and compounded the delays and the shortages, costing the lives of frontline staff and patients. There's been an estimated total of £1.7 billion spent by this government contracting private companies to manage the response to the pandemic. The usual tendering process has been bypassed. The new private deals have been signed without competitive tendering, with some ludicrous results. Test and trace by Serco, now taken over by local authorities and public health departments. Amazon, or delivering testing kits. Private laboratories for testing samples, and Deloitte Management Consultancy advising on logistics and PPE. So they join KMPG, Mighty, Boots, Sodexo, Virgin and dozens of others involved in the changing of the NHS into a business rather than a public service. In the last 5 years, contracts have been awarded costing £15 billion. This government used the pandemic to further transfer NHS duties to the private sector, accelerating the dismantling of the NHS. So what can we do? Well, as it says on the posters, we can reclaim our NHS. We can get it funded realistically. We can stop all privatisation and restore services back into the public sector NHS. We can write off the dreadful PSI debt, which is crippling the trust. We can end all NHS charges to migrants and asylum seekers. We can stop NHS closures and cuts. and we can bring all the social care services into a national health and care service with appropriate pay and conditions to value all care staff. No more 0 hours contracts there. No pay freeze. Insist the NHS is not for sale, and vote for an amendment, and get them to vote for an amendment that takes the NHS out of the US-UK trade agreement negotiations. We managed to get rid of TTIP. We can manage to do this. Ultimately, alter the health and social care legislation to reflect the true meaning of the NHS. The NHS is free to everybody, and as Now Bevan said, the NHS will last as long as those are prepared to have the spirit to fight for it. Remember this when we clap for the NHS at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Right, that's all the speakers we have for you. It's 2:25 but Gwen is trying to relaunch Defend Our NHS York. We do have an NHS campaigning group, but we want to build that group much more widely. If you're interested in getting involved in campaigning for the NHS and working with Gwen and other like-minded people to do that, there's some sign-up sheets on the Socialist Alternative stall there. You're not signing up to the Socialist Alternative, you're signing up for the NHS campaign. It's just there we have a table that you can rest on. If you're interested in that, please do that. Leave your email address or your telephone number. Now that's the end of this little gathering for today. But what I would ask you to do, if you're prepared to, if you'd like to, is on your way home, walk past the hospital, and if you see any NHS workers there, just work on your way home. We'd rather people did that, but obviously if you've other things on this afternoon, that's fine. But we would like you to walk that way out if you would. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to Rachel for coming, and to Leigh and to Gwen, and especially to Gwen for helping us organise this event. Thank you all for coming. So let's hear it all for the speakers and for yourselves for coming. Thank you very much. Gwen's got one more thing she'd like to say.
At 3:30 today, there is a Zoom, and it's also on YouTube and Facebook, by the Campaigns for Health, and also Keep Our NHS Public, and the People's Assembly. And it's the People's Assembly posters that you're actually holding with Reclaim Our NHS, with the originator here today, so thank you. So 3:30, it'll be going on for an hour and a half, so you've just got time to do that, get a cup of tea and go out and clap or have a glass of wine or whatever you're going to do. Okay, thanks.